Welcome to Veganpodden.se. If you are new to this podcast, my name is Minal and I'm your host. This is the last episode before next year, and this will be the most important episode because we will take the essence from all the interviews and research done since this podcast started, only 3 months ago. Imagine, we are already at episode 7. And since the first 3 episodes in the series were in Swedish, now is also a brilliant opportunity to give the essence of them in English. Of course, we will also cover recent news, and that is what we will start with this time. Then we will browse through the definition of veganism and how are inspections done in restaurants in Sweden. What does the animal protection law actually say? And how can animal protection become better? How does the business opportunities look like for vegan businesses? And what psychological aspects are there for vegans? And more. It will be a very quick browsing. And I must say, the episodes done so far has been a great way to document my own journey into the depths of veganism, to understand where it stands today. I have a good feeling about the future, but we all need to form it together. Sit back, keep on walking, do whatever you want while listening, except falling asleep. Let's get started. So, time for the latest news. The news briefing. The Swedish leading retail group Axfood has released their annual market research on the vegetarian trends in Sweden. The research goes under the name Vegobarometern and was performed by the market research firm Kantar Sifo. This was the 5th annual research, and the trends shows that more Swedish people eat vegetarian food, and also that for the 5th year in a row, the number of flexitarians, meaning people having vegetarian food as a base but still eats some meat, is increasing. It also shows that the number of vegetarians are slightly decreasing and the number of vegans are somewhat increasing. The largest changes seen are that those that has swapped to having more vegetarian food a couple of times per week are more, and those that never eat vegetarian meals are fewer. According to Axfood, 56% of Swedish people eat a vegetarian meal at least once a week. The San Francisco-based company Eat Just, which produces meat and egg substitutes, has been approved for selling its cell-cultivated chicken substitute in Singapore. This was announced by the Canadian investment company Eat Beyond Global Holding, which has made investments in Eat Just. After the press release, the Eat Beyond Global Holding share price skyrocketed more than 40%. The share has after that bounced back, but still 2 weeks after, there are large fluctuations in the share on a daily basis. A plant-based 3D burger takes to the stock market via the Israeli company Savor Eat, which produces plant-based meat alternatives using 3D technology. According to several media, the company has developed a special technology including a smart robot for 3D printing and advanced technology for grilling the product. Another Israeli company making headlines is Remilk. The company uses microbial fermentation to create identical dairy products. It's a startup that just raised $11.3 million that will be used for production and distribution. The company MyCoworks, which develops animal-free leather material based on mushrooms, has received additional financial backing of $45 million. The company says in a press release that the big demand on their patented material named reishi has made them open a new production unit in California. The financiers includes celebrity names such as John Legend, Natalie Portman, and large global luxury brands within shoes and fashion. The company Shiok Meats, based in Singapore and which produces cell-cultivated crustacean, has just launched the world's first cell-based lobster, the company says in a press release. And the Swedish startup company Hooked Food just received additional 5.1 million Swedish kronor funding, which is about $600,000. They say in a press release that their tuna product named Tuna will start being launched in restaurant chains around Sweden around springtime. The company IKEA intends to have 50% of their restaurant meals plant-based by the year 2025. They also say that then 80% of the meals should be without red meat. The Swedish animal rights group Djurrättsalliansen questioned the insights and handling of mink farming by the Swedish authorities. They say that when investigating documents from the Swedish Board of Agriculture, they found that the authority has missed to send the new restrictions regarding COVID-19 to half of the mink farms. Even mink farms that has got confirmed COVID-19 in their farms have been missed in information briefings. Also, mink farms that are inactive has received information. The animal rights organization therefore now is questioning how the Swedish Minister of Agriculture, Jenny Nilsson, publicly can state that they actively follow the events on COVID-19 in Swedish mink farms, when the list of mink farms that the authority uses itself is not correct. Continuing in Sweden, the authority for controlling that farmed animals are taken care of properly, Länsstyrelsen in Skåne, found after getting tipped off 80 dead and mummified pigs that had died from starvation. The county veterinary said they may have been lying there for months or maybe a year. The company Unilever, a giant within consumer goods, says it wants to increase its sales of plant-based meat and plant-based substitutes for dairy, five-folded to year 2027. It means that the sale needs to reach approximately the gigantic sum of $1.2 billion. It's a scary target, but it's important that we set it, says the company. Unilever estimates that the global plant-based meat market will be valued year 2027 to $35.5 billion. According to BBC, one of its brands that Unilever wants to increase the sales in is the vegetarian butcher. Among the vegan dairy substitute products, they want to increase sales of vegan Ben & Jerry ice cream, Magnum vegan, vegan cornetto, and Hellman vegan mayonnaise. This podcast series started by trying to understand what veganism actually is, and it became clear after conversation with the Swedish food agency Livsmedelsverket that there is no definition for what the word vegan stands for or what vegan food can and cannot include. Since it is not defined in law, there are also no measures that can be taken to ensure that products are vegan. Veganpodden.se called a food inspector responsible for inspecting food outlets in the Swedish capital Stockholm, and we learned that since the word vegan is not defined in law, no controls on vegan are being made. In other words, there are no controls and no legal implication. If a cafe puts honey in a cake and calls it vegan, there is nothing that says that that is not correct. Veganpodden.se also learned that the same goes with the word vegetarian. Since it is not defined in law, the rules for what is okay to use in marketing can depend on what is conventional use of the word in the society. So a pizza containing cheese can be called vegetarian, but other products with cheese should be called lacto-vegetarian. So it's important and interesting to come to know how ambiguous the vocabulary for vegan and vegetarian food is. And the definition of what is what surely is something that needs more attention, especially since today there is a major global transition going on towards switching to plant-based food. The name vegan is said to come from the Vegan Society that was created in 1944, and we asked the Vegan Society about the definition and got this answer. There is no definition of vegan in law. The closest we have in the European context is that vegans are concerned with animal welfare. They also informed us that in Great Britain, the local food inspectors can act against companies that uses the terminology vegan on products that are from animals or have been made with the use of animals or animal products. Since there is no definition in law, there are a lot of companies and organizations that has created their own certification to ensure that a product is vegan according to their certification standards. Many of them includes in their certification that the product is not using animal testing. So in short, something that is vegan should not contain animals. It should also not have used animals in any other way, for example in testing the products. In simple words, vegan means being on the animal side always. The next important area to get a grip on is what protection do animals actually have. We got the chance to interview two experts in the area. Frida Lundmark Hedlund from the Swedish University of Agricultural Studies, SLU. She explained that in Sweden, for example, it says in the law that we can use animals for our own purposes like entertainment, food, sports and so on, and we are also allowed to take lives of animals, if it is done in a humane way. She also explained that the law for animals are different depending on for what purpose we have the animal. So a cat in a laboratory has a different protection than a cat that is used as a pet. We talked about the fact that European Union in their treaty law, Article 13, expresses clearly that animals are sentient and should be protected.
I EUs ramlagstiftning, där slås det fast att alla medlemsstater måste behandla djur som kännande varelser och att man också ska ta med det när man fattar olika typer av beslut.
So Lundmark Hedlund says it is stated that all member states in EU must handle animals as sentient beings and ensure they always take this into account when various decisions are made.
Nu har man också utökat syftet och säger att man också ska ge djuren en god djurvälfärd och man ska jobba för att främja respekten för djur. Och de skrivningarna är ju väldigt intressanta, för de har ju på något sätt inte riktigt kanske slagit igenom än.
Lundmark Hedlund also said that Sweden last year got new stricter animal protection law, and where it says that Sweden also must ensure the animals have a good living standard and also enhance the respect given to animals. These new lines has still not been set into practice. However, the Swedish laws are not likely to get any real impact, and a part of that reason has to do with the government's national food strategy for Sweden. The food strategy allows for exceptions being made to the animal protection laws.
Det finns flera exempel på det, som ett glapp mellan det man påstår liksom i lagen att det här är vår lagstiftningsintentioner och sen vad som faktiskt tillåts i föreskrifterna.
Lundmark Hedlund explains that there is a gap between what is said in the intention of the laws and what is actually stated in the directive that are made from the laws. So while the new animal protection law stresses that animals are sentient and needs to be able to act in a natural way, as much as possible, which of course includes mother instincts and mother and child being able to live together, the need for an animal to feel fresh air, the need for an animal to move around and stretch the body. The actual directives made out of the laws are something totally different. In Sweden, horses are protected to have some free times to stretch and jump around, but that is not given to cows, who actually also have the same need. In Sweden, a cow can be tied up all year long. So I then also talked to the legal expert Dr. Birgitta Wahlberg from the university in Finland, Åbo Academy. She's a university teacher in law sciences, and she tells about an initiative she's part in where a group in Finland have created a detailed proposal to have laws protecting animals included in the constitution. They propose animals being given basic rights and seen as subject in the law. Since normal laws cannot go against constitutional laws, animals would be protected in a more proper way.
Vi till exempel har konstaterat i vårt förslag att djur har ett egenvärde, och på basis av det här egenvärdet, när det är en grundrättighet, så betyder det att man måste följa en sån här nödvändighetsprincip, proportionalitetsprincip och försiktighetsprincip.
Dr. Wahlberg says that if animals were given basic rights, then the principle of proportionality, the principle of necessity, and the precautionary principle would be used. Such principle could, for example, prevent that all animals in a population are killed in mass because one animal is sick. So, since we know and have acknowledged that animals are sentient, it's hard to grip that we rip calves away from their mother, and that pigs and minks in a structured way are gassed to death in mass, just because it's efficient. Veganpodden.se has the last 3 months covered the business side of the vegan movement. And what is evident is that there are a lot of startup companies in the plant-based sector popping up. There are lots of financial funding that can be received from various organizations. It is evident that investors, whether or not they are vegan themselves, are seeing the enormous force that plant-based food and products are in. And so the big investment companies are investing big bucks in vegan stuff. We spoke with Måns Ullerstam from the Swedish vegan investment company Kale United.
Alltså nu har det börjat vända och det finns väldigt mycket kapital som är intresserat av att investera i den här typen av bolag.
He describes the momentum that is right now for startups in plant-based market and says that time has now changed so that there is now a huge amount of capital that wants to invest in these kind of companies. And there are so many new brands entering the market that it is almost difficult to cover them. In Sweden today, for each plant-based product, you often have multiple brands to choose between, like multiple brands for milkish drinks made from oats, or multiple brands for plant-based burgers, multiple brands for plant-based cheeses, and so on. And already now, we also see the entry of multiple brands for fish-like products and chicken-like products. When we, in our first episode, interviewed the sustainable chief Kai Törek at the main burger restaurant chain Max in Sweden, we got to know that they changed their company name in order to better reflect their future business model.
Nu heter vi Max Burgers och tidigare hette vi Max Hamburgerrestauranger. Och varför vi ville göra förflyttningen var både för att vi spred oss utomlands, men också för att vi har faktiskt hållit på att ändra vår affärsmodell. Från den klassiska nötköttsburgaren till burgare som är gjorda på massor av annat gott.
He describes that they changed their name to reflect the new business model that previously focused on beef burgers to also incorporate burgers made of other ingredients. In a mail, he also informed that the ambition of Max Burgers is to have half of the meals free from red meats by 2022. And pure vegan companies are making the way forward, and companies like Beyond Burgers and Very Good Food Company that entered the American and Canadian stock exchange started by shooting to the sky. Many are waiting for Oatly to enter the market. And before that, we may just as well see one or more other rockets. The company Eat Just, that has egg substitute and just introduced their cultivated cell-based chicken in Singapore, made the Canadian investment company Eat Beyond Global Holding make a roller coaster ride. If you like business, or if you like to support the vegan market, vegan companies and stocks can be quite fun to keep an eye on. And it's not easy to be vegan in a non-vegan world. I called the vegan psychologist Claire Mann in Australia, who is a specialist when it comes to understanding vegan needs. She has coined the name dystopia just to describe how vegans in a non-vegan world can feel, the existential crisis they can feel.
Firstly, I think a lot of people believe, they sort of say, well, why are people so fussy about these things? The non-vegan world will say, why are they getting so upset? And people don't really get upset about being told they've got a fussy diet. They get upset when they have become aware of the systematized and institutionalized cruelty towards animals, which is legal and standardized, and when they tell people these people either don't care or they don't want to hear anymore. The living as a vegan in a non-vegan world, the world is seen very differently. I've only been vegan for 10 years, and for many years before, I could walk through a shopping centre or I could look into a shop for something, and now I see it differently. I see what people are eating, and I don't think of food, I think of the animal suffering. I see a fur collar on a coat, and I see an animal in a cage losing their skin. And so vegans see the world very differently, and so they have to deal with the anxiety or the anguish of knowing about the allowable suffering towards animals, and totally unnecessary. At the same time, then they tell people, and people either minimize it or say, don't tell me what to do, it's my choice.
And it seems that it is very important for vegans that need professional help for their mental well-being to ensure to get hold of a professional that truly understands the perspective of a vegan.
Well, I'm actually seeing, and I've seen it more than ever, bad behavior on the part of psychologists of telling vegans, stop judging me, stop pushing your ideas, when that's not a psychologist's job. A psychologist's job would be, if the person kept pushing it and really being forceful, is to try to explore whether the person felt they wanted to do that, not to say, don't make me feel guilty.
I also talked to the Swedish psychologist Paula Richter, who also has an extra focus on climate issues. We talked about the anxiety activists can feel, and I wondered about symptoms.
I would say that when you become an activist, typically you have actually less symptoms, because if you become an activist, it is because you have already seen this. And when you see all this that is going on and you do not act on it, that's when you feel really bad. So usually you have a lot of more symptoms and you have more anxiety when you don't act according to your beliefs.
Richter also gave some advice on how to handle anxiety.
First of all, to actually hang out with friends who see life the way you do, because you really need those people who understand your thoughts about this. So that is one very important part. And another very important part is to choose your fights. You can't fight everybody, and you will not get people to come with you if you try to fight the opponents most of all. because opponents aren't going to listen to you. You need to talk to the people that are neutral or maybe passive, but still understand what you're talking about. Then you will get more people to come with you, to engage with you, and also to take pauses, to actually realize that you can't fight all the time, because you will not be able to. You will crush yourself on the way.
Veganpodden.se also made a special episode focused on India and was then in contact with the Indian side of the global animal rights organization PETA, situated in Mumbai. And since India has such a large population that claims to care for animals and especially cows, the dairy consumption of the country is mind-blowing. We learned from PETA that India is home to the most cattle in the world, and it is the world's largest milk producer. So not surprisingly, that also makes India one of the world's top beef exporting nations. And since India does not do any meat breeding, all of the meat, which is buffalo, comes from the dairy industry. And also not surprising, we also find that India is one of the top countries in leather production. In India, slaughtering is forbidden in many states, and since the used cows and buffaloes needs to disappear somewhere after they have been used, PETA informs that many are slaughtered in the illegal slaughterhouses. India has some 25,000 unregistered slaughterhouses. Some that are not sent to slaughterhouses are traded away, and also many become stray. Today, according to PETA India, there are more than 5 million stray cattle in India, who often face death by being hit by cars or eating discarded plastic waste. During the last 3 months, by doing research and interviews, Veganpodden.se has learned both that the amount of animal killed in animal industry every day are billions and billions, and also that this large amount also creates a lot of byproduct after the slaughter. Fats, bones, and other things from animals are cheap and has been used in so many not obvious places. Candles, car tires, plastic bags, 5-pound notes, filtration of sugar, clearing wines, fertilizers, and so on. Animals have become material and for giving material effects. Slippery, gluey, chewy, or just jelly. And as we learned in the beginning of this episode, we are supposed to give animals respect. I don't know what respect we give them when we use them in toothpaste. But the world is changing, and so are we. We are joining the future, 'cause the future is vegan. Have great holidays, Happy New Year, and see you again 2021. And please follow if you like this podcast so you don't miss any new episodes. And also, all help in spreading is very much appreciated. And about jokes. It's fun with jokes. And sometimes when you translate a joke to a different language, you get something totally different. So in Sweden, one of the main standard jokes that all knows about, the one where 2 tomatoes cross the street, one gets hit by a car and the other says, "Come on, catch up." We understand the play with words when it's in English. But this joke we always do in Swedish and nobody thinks about the meaning. It's become a top joke because it's a joke with no sense. Kom nu ketchup så går vi. So let's do the opposite. I now here give you one of the top Swedish vegan jokes in English. How do you comfort a sad vegan? You just say, "Soja, soja, ingen fara."